There is a moment when a sigma stops giving chances, and the strange part is that you may not even realize it happened. There might be no dramatic argument, no final warning, and no emotional goodbye. One day they're still trying to understand you, still listening, still giving you the benefit of the doubt. Then suddenly something changes. Asterisk, they stop expecting anything from you. And that's where the real ending begins. Because a sigma can tolerate mistakes. They can understand that people aren't perfect. They can forgive someone who genuinely takes responsibility and tries to change. But repeated disrespect, broken promises, manipulation, and the same behavior over and over eventually create something much stronger than anger. Asterisk, detachment. You may still see the same person. They may still speak to you politely. They may even smile. But the emotional investment that once existed is slowly disappearing. They aren't trying to punish you. They're simply no longer willing to keep paying the emotional price. And here's what makes this moment so difficult to recognize. When a sigma is still arguing with you, there is often still something they want to save. When they're still explaining what hurts them, they're still giving you information about how to repair the connection. But when they stop explaining, when they stop asking, when they stop reacting, asterisk, you may already be standing on the other side of their final chance. So what actually happens inside a sigma before they reach that point? What makes them finally decide that another opportunity isn't worth giving? And why can their final withdrawal feel so sudden to the person who never noticed the warnings? In this video, we're going to uncover the psychological signs that appear when a sigma reaches their limit, from the moment they stop arguing to the moment they completely detach. Because sometimes, the final chance doesn't disappear during the biggest argument. Asterisk, it disappears quietly during the moment they realize that nothing they say is going to change what you keep choosing to do. 1. Asterisk, they stop believing your promises. The first sign that a sigma has reached the point where they no longer want to give chances is when your promises stop carrying the same meaning. In the beginning, they may genuinely believe you. If you apologize, they listen. If you promise to change, they may give you another opportunity. They don't necessarily expect perfection. They simply want to see that your words have real meaning. But when the same promise is repeated too many times without a real change in behavior, something slowly breaks inside them. They stop focusing on what you say and start focusing entirely on what you do. You might apologize again, explain yourself again, and promise that this time everything will be different. But instead of arguing, they may simply become quiet. That silence is important. It can mean they've heard the promise before, they've already seen the pattern, and they've learned that words without consistent action don't create trust. At this stage, another apology may not create another opportunity. The sigma isn't necessarily angry anymore. They're simply becoming realistic. Asterisk, they no longer judge you by your promises. They judge you by your patterns. And once someone reaches that mindset, rebuilding trust becomes much harder because the burden is no longer on words. It's on consistent action over time. 2. Asterisk, they stop explaining what hurts them. At first, a sigma may be surprisingly patient when something bothers them. They might tell you exactly what you did wrong. They may explain why it affected them and what they would like to see change. They do this because they still believe communication can solve the problem. But imagine explaining the same issue again and again only to watch the same behavior return. Eventually, something changes. They stop explaining. And this is one of the most misunderstood signs because people often think silence means everything is okay. Sometimes silence means the opposite. The sigma may have reached the point where they no longer believe another conversation will make a difference. They've already communicated their boundary. They've already given you the information needed to understand what went wrong. Now they're watching what you choose to do with that information. If nothing changes, they don't necessarily keep repeating themselves. They simply adjust their distance. That's when you may notice shorter conversations, less emotional openness, and fewer attempts to resolve conflicts. They're not necessarily trying to punish you. Asterisk, they're protecting their energy from a conversation they've already had too many times. And when someone stops explaining their pain, you shouldn't automatically assume they stopped caring. Sometimes they stopped explaining because they finally accepted that you weren't going to change. 3. Asterisk, they stop giving you the benefit of the doubt. A sigma may initially look for explanations when you disappoint them. Maybe you were having a bad day. Maybe you didn't realize how your behavior affected them. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. They may give you the benefit of the doubt because they don't want to judge someone based on one isolated moment. But repeated behavior changes the equation. After enough disappointments, they stop looking for excuses on your behalf. They no longer ask, maybe there's another explanation. They start asking, asterisk, how many times have I seen this already? This is a major psychological shift. When someone still believes the relationship can work, they interpret mistakes generously. When their trust starts disappearing, they begin looking at the pattern instead of the individual incident. One broken promise might be forgiven. 5 broken promises become a pattern. One disrespectful moment might be understood. Repeated disrespect becomes a choice. The sigma isn't necessarily becoming unfair. They're becoming more observant about what the relationship is actually showing them. And this is where many people make a mistake. They assume the Sigma suddenly became cold. But the truth may be that the Sigma was patient for a very long time. They were watching, they were hoping, they were giving opportunities, until eventually the evidence became stronger than the hope. Asterisk, when the benefit of the doubt disappears, the relationship enters a completely different stage. 4. Asterisk, they become emotionally quieter. One of the biggest warning signs is when the Sigma stops reacting emotionally to things that used to matter deeply. Before, they might have been upset when you disappointed them. They might have argued, questioned you, or tried to understand what happened. Then one day, they don't react. You expect anger. Instead, you get calmness. You expect an argument. Instead, you get silence. You expect them to fight for the relationship. Instead, they simply say, asterisk, I understand. That change can be extremely significant. Anger often shows that someone is still emotionally invested in the outcome. When someone is trying to fix something, they usually have strong feelings about what happens next. But emotional neutrality can indicate that the person has already started detaching. They may still care about you as a person, but they are no longer willing to spend emotional energy fighting the same battle. And this is why their quietness shouldn't always be interpreted as weakness. Sometimes the strongest response is no response. They've realized that reacting won't change the situation. So instead of trying to control you, they begin controlling their own access to the situation. Asterisk, the day they stop reacting may be the day they stop expecting you to change. And that can be far more serious than an argument. 5. Asterisk, they stop trying to fix everything. A Sigma can be extremely persistent when they believe something is worth saving. They may try different approaches, have difficult conversations, forgive mistakes, and search for solutions. But even patience has a limit. Eventually, they may stop trying to fix every problem. The relationship starts feeling different because the responsibility for maintaining it is no longer carried by one person. If you create distance, they don't immediately chase. If you stop communicating, they don't endlessly ask what's wrong. If you create conflict, they don't automatically rush to repair it. This doesn't mean they don't care. It means they are beginning to understand that a relationship cannot be repaired by one person alone. There must be mutual effort, there must be accountability, there must be genuine change. Without those things, constantly trying to fix the same problem only creates exhaustion. This is often the stage where the other person finally notices something is wrong. They may ask, why don't you care anymore? But the Sigma may have a completely different answer. They cared, they tried, they communicated, they waited. And eventually, they realized they couldn't do the work for two people. Asterisk, when someone stops trying to save something, don't assume they never valued it. Sometimes they valued it so much that they finally became exhausted from carrying it alone. 6. Asterisk, they start choosing peace over connection. At some point, a Sigma may reach a decision that changes everything. Their peace is more important than keeping a particular connection alive. This doesn't necessarily happen because they hate someone. It happens because they realize that constant emotional stress isn't worth the price. They may begin asking different questions. Instead of asking, how can I keep this person in my life? They ask, asterisk, what happens to my life if I continue accepting this? That question changes the entire perspective. They begin looking at the relationship objectively. Does it bring mutual respect? Does communication exist? Are boundaries respected? Is there trust? Are both people making an effort? If the answer continues to be no, they become more willing to create distance. And once peace becomes a priority, manipulation becomes much harder. Guilt doesn't work the same way. Fear doesn't work the same way. Empty promises don't work the same way. Because they are no longer trying to keep everyone happy. They're trying to protect the stability they've worked hard to build. Asterisk, a Sigma doesn't always leave because they stopped caring. Sometimes they leave because they finally started caring about themselves enough to stop accepting what destroys their peace. And once that realization becomes strong enough, another chance may no longer seem worth the cost. 7. Asterisk, they finally walk away without looking back. The final stage is when the Sigma stops waiting and actually walks away. What makes this different from previous attempts is that there is no hidden expectation that you'll chase them. They aren't leaving to create jealousy. They aren't leaving to test whether you care. They aren't leaving because they want you to beg them to stay. They're leaving because they've reached a conclusion. And that conclusion may have been forming for months. They've remembered the good moments. They've considered your explanations. They've accepted your apologies. They've watched your actions. They've given opportunities. And eventually, they decided that continuing the same cycle would cost more than ending it. That's why the final departure can look strangely peaceful. There may be no dramatic speech, no revenge, no attempt to destroy your reputation, just distance. They continue their life, they build new routines, they focus on their goals, and slowly the relationship becomes part of their past. This doesn't mean they never cared. It means they no longer believe going back will produce a different result. Asterisk, when a Sigma finally walks away without looking back, The hardest truth is that the final chance may have disappeared long before the final goodbye. And by the time you realize they're truly gone, they may have already made peace with the decision. The day a Sigma stops giving chances usually isn't the day they become angry. It's the day they become certain. Certain that the same promises will keep repeating. Certain that the same patterns won't change. And certain that protecting their peace is more important than continuing to explain why they're hurt. They may forgive you. They may remember the good moments. They may even wish you well. But forgiveness doesn't always mean access, and caring doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes the final chance disappears quietly, long before the final goodbye. So here's the question. If a Sigma stopped arguing with you, stopped explaining what hurt them, and suddenly became completely calm, would you recognize that they were giving you one last chance? Or would you realize too late that the last chance had already disappeared? Tell me your answer in the comments. And if this video made you think differently about Sigma psychology, like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more content about mindset, psychology, independence, and human behavior. Because when someone finally stops giving chances, the silence you hear may be the sound of a decision that was made long before you noticed it.